Spring is the time of year when the snow begins to leave, and the green of summer begins to take hold of the fields. This video is a compilation of trains I caught on the Canadian National Three Hills and Camrose subdivisions in the spring of 2019 that didn't have a place in their own video. Let us begin this CN Spring Railfanning Spectacular of 2019. In late March, I was passing by Sarcee Yard in Calgary, where the Three Hills subdivision ends. This was around the time when 3140 first arrived in Sarcee. I didn't get to see it working, only taking on sand. Sand is used to give locomotives traction on the rails, especially when the rails are slippery or the train is starting on an uphill grade. 3140 was built as a GP50 for the Chicago Northwestern as number 5051 in 1980, serving only 7 years before suffering a devastating train wreck. The engine was put into storage for around a decade with the NRE before later being purchased by the Illinois Central. There, the locomotive was rebuilt and repainted to GP40-3 specs as it remains today. Now, it works for CN as a switcher, still retaining the beloved IC scheme. These locomotives are referred to by rail fans as Death Stars, not only because of the gray color, but also because the logo on the nose resembles the Death Star from the Star Wars movies. Not all that much was happening in Sarcee today. The only other locomotive here was 5381, an SD40-2 just idling away. Besides that, it was just freight cars awaiting movement. Sarcee isn't real exciting on Sunday afternoons. On April 21st, 2019's Easter Sunday, we pulled into the hamlet of Swalwell. The train on the approach is what I believe to be CN Q193, a northbound intermodal and auto train heading for Prince Rupert, BC. A very nice consist was on point, an ex-Santa Fe C40-8W 2162 leading the trio, followed by ex-Chicago Northwestern C40-8 2120, and ex-EMD Demo SD60 5438. No actual native CN power on this train, all second-hand units that have been absorbed into the company over time. Splitting the well cars and auto racks was a small cut of random manifest, seemingly a common theme for Q193. These cars were likely dropped in Mirror or in Edmonton's Walker Yard. On April 23rd, I paid a visit to Three Hills for a day of railfanning. I set up at the mile 60.69 crossing and waited for trains. The first one to come through was CN M315. The Gevo leading had a very nice sounding K3H horn, something not usually found on ES44s. This horn reminds me of the CN GP40-2 LWs. M315 is typically a manifest train, but curiously, Today it was mostly autoracks, with only a little manifest in the middle. I believe that M315 has had its symbol changed to X315 while running on the CN3 hill sub now, but I'm not certain. The X in the symbol would imply the train is an extra, while the M implies the train is a manifest. By this time, there was a Q114 waiting in Perks, and had been for around an hour or so. But he would have to wait a little longer. RTC cleared a Q115 from Mirror to Calgary, only 30 minutes behind 315. An hour or so later, around noon, Q115 finally came through. They had cut in a third unit in Mirror because trains can stall on the grade between Three Hills and Twinning, as well as the grade between Swalwell and Bircham, especially if the train is long and heavy, as this Q115 was. When 115 cleared Perks, it was finally Q114's turn. The train had been waiting so long, they had to send out another crew to change off at Perks because the original crew ran out of hours. This is the main issue with Perks. Trains of lesser priority may have to wait an entire day before proceeding, meaning a crew works a whole shift babysitting a parked train. Not exactly an efficient use of employees' time. Q114 had a pair of GE-9s leading this afternoon, and it was another train with a nice horn. A week or so later, on a windy May morning, I was on my way into Calgary when a different Q114 snuck up on me in Bicycle. This Q114 was led by an ES44DC and an SD75I riding what's called elephant style, where both units are facing the same direction. Now usually I have a problem with cars or trucks in the shot, but I thought this semi was kinda neat looking, so it didn't bother me all that much. Later that day, on my way home from Calgary, I ran into A443 north of Bicycle. Notice the dead silence of the Alberta prairies, disturbed only by the distant sound of a K5 LLA horn. A443 had a reasonable variety of cars within its train this afternoon, though a third of the consist was autoracks. I then chased the train to the windy grade between Swalwell and Bircham, Alberta. The 4 locomotives were working fairly hard as the train climbed the hill towards Swalwell. I'd like to point out yet another nice lash-up, with an SD70M-2, followed by an SD60, then an American-styled SD70M-2, and an XIC-9. These different locomotive consists are the main attraction for rail fans to CN. With so many locomotives on the roster, it's unlikely that a day of rail fanning will just be filled with GEVOs, which is good if you're like me and prefer older 90s power over any GEVO. On May 24th, I was on my way to Edmonton when I heard S713 over the scanner. I caught it at a crossing north of Lamerton on the CN Camrose sub. Alas, when you have a light camera and aren't expecting a horn show from the loud K3H, well, it looks like a small earthquake. S713 is a northbound sulphur train originating in Ram River, Alberta, and terminating in either Vancouver's Thornton Yard or in CP's Coquitlam Yard in BC. I'm not sure where this one was going specifically. Sulphur trains run on the Camrose sub about twice a week, and I was pleased to have caught this one, especially almost completely by chance. After Lamerton, we paced him along Highway 21 for a while. We just barely got ahead of 713 before Bashaw, but not far ahead. I didn't even have time to get out of the car for this shot. Later that day, while on the return trip, I bumped into another 443 near Hay Lakes, only this one was X443. It was led by a pair of Dash 9s, with the second one being a Canadian-built C44-9WL, my personal favorite variant of the Dash 9. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the X at the front of the train symbol means extra, at least on CN that is. This 443 could be an extra because A443 already left that day. It could be overflow traffic that A443 couldn't take for some reason, or because the next day's 443 can't run due to extensive track maintenance, or a combination of reasons. Either way, it was another train I got to see that day, and nothing makes a foamer happier than an extra train or two. The last train that day was CN L550, returning to Mirror off the Brazos sub. Here we see the train rounding the curve at the south end of Alex, Alberta. You may recognize the SD70i, SD75i consist from my May Long Weekend video. The lash-up was used for 550 for a good 2 months before the power was changed out. L550 is a local train called the Prentice Joffre Turn, and I believe it runs daily. After L550, the rain rolled in, so I decided to call it a day. Railfanning in the rain is no fun at all. Later that month, I set up at a crossing on Range Road 240, south of Three Hills, to catch a couple of trains passing through that evening. The first of which was Q115. A pair of GEs were leading Q115 this evening, an ES44 AC with a burnt-out headlight bulb, and a common Dash 9. This crossing is a popular railfanning spot because it is a good shot of both north and southbound trains. Today, Q115 was long, really long. Long enough to warrant the use of 2 mid-DPUs, an EMD SD75i and a GE ES44 AC. DPUs don't come down the Three Hill sub too often, but when they do, it typically means the train won't fit in perks, as was the case today. DPUs are often added because of the grades between Trochu and Bicycle, the same reason for adding the third unit to the last Q115 we saw in Three Hills. After 115 passed the south end switch at Perks, then the train in the siding continued its descent north. Leading this train was 2 ex-Illinois Central Dash 9s. Even though they are in CN paint, the crew still refers to them as IC units when talking to RTC.
443, 443, IC 2723, 2723, arrived siding south switch Perks, clear of the main track, 1827, 1827, over.
This can be confusing if you don't know the road numbers, as they can be confused with a Death Star or a Blue Devil this way. This train was yet another A443, a mixed train from Edmonton to Calgary, Alberta. Our last train was filmed in the same spot, only on the very smoky evening of May 31st. An SD75i and Dash 9WL led the train through the smoke around 8 o'clock in the evening. The smoke was caused by the forest fires in northern Alberta that year. This was another A443, the most popular train of spring apparently. It showed what these mixed trains can truly look like, nothing but pure variety in freight cars on the train. My favorite part of this train was the 50-foot flat car with wheel sets on it. Something you don't see too often that adds to the story of an already interesting manifest train. Thanks for watching this CN Spring Railfanning Spectacular of 2019. If any questions arose during the video, feel free to post them in the comments section below. I read and try to reply to all of my comments if I can. For more videos like this in the future, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, take care train fans, and I'll see you soon.